In this session, we'll dig into the ViziVault Enterprise Management Console a bit. So here I'm logged in as an administrator, so I have access to everything. There are different roles that would allow different users access to various aspects of this application here. When I first log in, I'm brought to this high-level dashboard. It provides some insights into personal information, how it's being used throughout the organization, and how it's classified and associated with different regulations. I'll get back to this in a later session. I want to start with a use case, which is me as a compliance analyst coming in and looking to establish some data rules for associating different data and usage to regulations. So I'm going to show a couple of different concepts in the application, and then we will create our first rule. So the first thing, all the data that's stored in the vault is associated with people. It's all people information. And so the way that we define those pieces of information are through what we call attributes. So if I go to the attributes area, you can see here, these are all the different pieces of personal information that are stored in the system. And so they can be simple things like an email address, or they can be something with a bit more structure, like a billing address, right? That's something that has multiple constituent parts that make up a billing address. And so these different data elements or schemas are defined in the system as attributes. And so this is all of the data that we model about people that are stored in the system and that various applications can leverage. The applications themselves are also modeled here. So, going back to the ecosystem diagram, these would be all of the different systems that were on the left-hand side there. So you can see here, I have a data processing pipeline, an email system, and a core application, and an ingestion pipeline. So these are the various systems that are connected to ViziVault and have different access to different attributes. And so this is the sort of permissions area where I can set up what attributes each application has at various access levels to. And so this data processing pipeline can read, store, and delete certain fields. So this is where you can really limit your exposure within each application and only give them access to the different pieces of personal information that they need in order to perform their function. Another core concept here are called tags. Tags are essentially just data classifications. And so these are highly customizable, and you can create whatever tags you need in order to classify data as it comes in the door. And so you can see here various classifications that we have set up here already for this demonstration. Also are the various regulations that an organization is beholden to. So you can see here we've got some out-of-the-box regulations. If there are different regulations or newer regulations, or even custom corporate controls that you want to monitor, you can always create your own regulations as well. Okay, so with those concepts in mind, what we're going to do here as a compliance analyst is create a new rule. So this rules engine is how all of this data gets tied together and associated with the tags and regulations, and there's other actions you can take as well. And so our rules engine sort of drives the main usage of compliance within the application. So I go to this rules area. You can see we have some rules here set up already. I'm going to create a new one for the CCPA regulations. That's the California Consumer Protection Act. And so that regulation applies to any California citizen. And so we're going to create a rule that will associate that regulation with any California citizen data that comes in the door. So I'm going to create a new rule here. We're going to call it California citizen. And this is for CCPA compliance. So the way that the rules work are you model a series of constraints And if those constraints are satisfied, you can take an appropriate action. So we'll dig into the constraints here. I'm going to set one up that says if any of the following conditions are true, and there's various pieces of information that we can inspect. For this example, we're going to look at the underlying value for a data subject. So these rules are evaluated in the API at the time that data is entering the system. And so the rules can be evaluated on the unencrypted data, so we can take action on certain pieces of information based on their value. The rules are all evaluated before that data gets encrypted and put into the vault. And so we're going to inspect the value for a data subject. And what we're going to do for CCPA, we're going to say if the data subject's billing address state is exactly California, right? And in practice, there's probably many ways that you would identify a California citizen, but just for demonstration purposes, we'll stick with the billing address state. So the action that we're going to take here, there's various actions that we can take. One, I can classify the data. I can associate this data subject and its data to a classification or a tag. I can affiliate this data subject to a regulation. I can generate an alert. So if the constraint modeled some high-risk event, we can generate alerts within the system. I could block storage into the vault. So in this case, if I didn't want to deal with the CCPA at all, and I didn't want to house California citizen data, we could prevent that data from making its way into the system at all. I can apply a legal hold. So if this is a data subject that is under legal hold, we can apply that status so that data does not get changed or modified for that data subject. Or we can set a retention policy. So for certain data that we're collecting, if we want to set a policy that can only be housed for 7 years, we can set up a policy that will flag that data and track it towards its retention policy. So in this case, what we're going to do is we're going to associate this data subject with a regulation, and we're going to associate him with CCPA. Okay, so the rule that we were setting up here is any data that comes into the door, if the data subject's billing address state is California, then we are going to add a regulation to that data subject to flag that with the CCPA regulation. Okay, so now we have added this rule. These rules will be evaluated every time data passes through the API. And so now we have a California citizen rule, which will flag any data subjects that reside in California with the CCPA regulation. So just jumping back to the dashboard real quick, now these widgets here can start to make a little bit more sense. You can see how the privacy regulation liability here is tracked. It's with all of the data that gets flagged to each regulation. You see the attributes break down all the different attributes that have been created and their distribution throughout the system. So we'll dive into the dashboard a little bit in the next session, but here we have created and deployed our first regulatory rule.